Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. I am broadcasting at this point now on YouTube and on Odyssey. I'm not sharing anything right now on Facebook because of these critical words that I'm going to use. Um, my title of my show today is Communitarianism is Collectivism, which is slavery, which leads to what we call the Jewish perspective of what they've done basically in the last, well, thousands of years, many thousands of years, in fact, and how they destroyed um, not empires, but actually what we would call civilizations. They used them and got what they wanted and let them fall. It's an inside job, that is. They go in internally and begin to become, well, a lot of times simply are they're cryptos. They are crypto Jews, you see. They're really Jews. These are the privileged Jews, or ones that have some kind of knowledge, what we call probably the priestcraft of their religion, in the way of conniving and stealing from people. They believe that is what they're supposed to be doing. That's their belief system. They've never actually produced their own civilization, folks. There's no civilization of them there. If we restudy whatever they've done, such and such in thousands and thousands of years, where they claim to be, there's nothing of David. There's nothing of Solomon. There's no Solomon temple. There's nothing of that nature. It's all been mystified in some ways to make you, they don't have any so-called history because they've always lived like leeches and actually have stolen from those who worked their lives into the soil. So communitarianism is a word that they've come up with. Communitarianism is not community, folks. It has nothing to do with that. It's a false way of thinking of community. Community is when you work and help each other within your own neighborhood. It's a natural phenomenon. You see, it's a natural phenomenon. It occurs with your neighbors around you, and that's what we call a community. And a lot of that doesn't mean always simply is that a division. There's not a divide here. They've done a real good job of dividing people, also using political parties, all this stuff, because it's produced on news, because they own all the news radio stations, folks. They own it all. So they propagate, I should say, what they're teaching, what they believe in. And most of us are too stupid or gullible to their thinking. So communitarianism is unnatural. It's unnatural. It's the stack and pack, what we call the buildings that are being built across the world. It's the ugly buildings that were built in the Soviet Union, where they took over and put their people in to use them as slaves. And in the Soviet Union, that's right. Go look at the buildings of the old Soviet Union. You'll see they're ugly, drab buildings. There's no beauty in it. There's no nothing. It reflects a lot about who they are. There's a drabness of it. There's a grayness of it. There's an ugliness of it. You see, it doesn't. And then also the particular apartments. I've talked with people in the past that basically, there wasn't enough room for anyone really actually to have even a decent sized family. They were just stacked and packed even in the Soviet Union. And that's what they're doing here in the United States, because see, they don't want you on the land. They don't want you on the land. You see, when you're on the land, you're far more self-sufficient. You can take care of yourself. You can grow your crops. You can have your chickens. You can actually have room to roam. You can actually be in your privacy a lot of times, such and such. And so we are been programmed to live in cities, city states, so to speak. And the whole idea of what I was called this idea that they've come into this country, in fact, back in the 20s, 30s, back to the early 1900s, it's called critical theory. And the critical theory is based upon Antonio Gramsci, Gramsci was an Italian guy. He come to the realization there was no way the Soviet Union militarily is going to destroy the West because the West is going to fight back. So they realized they could not come in and fight an ordinary war in order to destroy them. And the First and Second World Wars were actually concocted by the Jews to destroy the people of Western Europe, the people of the Soviet Union, the people of Britain. All these countries was wrapped. And a lot of that's been actually the program by Tavistock Institute, which many of those members were either royalty. But in reality, most of those people in royalty were not actually Gentiles, as they call us, but they were actually crypto Jews. You know, Winston Churchill, either he was a crypto Jew or he was a completely person who was ruled by them because he would spend money lavishly and they would always give him money. So he was paid for that. He is no hero. Winston Churchill is no hero of the British people, you see. He was the one who was in South Africa. He's the one, as far as I know, was a brainchild of creating what we call the concentration camps, which took place in South Africa under the wars between the Boers. And Britain was basically there because of Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was a man who discovered what was in South Africa and also what was discovered in what we call Rhodesia at one time, now Zimbabwe. The minerals, the diamonds, the gold, the palladium, all of it, in a way of actually to rob the people there of that. And most of the Boers were just simply, quote unquote, were farmers. They were content with that. They were Dutch. Actually, I talked to a lady yesterday, ran into a lady who was from South Africa, and she was British, didn't understand what had happened in the past, and I tried to explain to her what has happened in the past and how many countries in the north, that is in the northern hemisphere, are always looking for resources in order to charge their own people that. In other words, they're able to, they're looking for resources because they don't either have them or they want to exploit other places and just to steal from them. So that they can actually get it for 10 cents on the dollar instead of actually paying 50 cents on the dollar in their own country, either oil or coal or any of that type of thing. So that was what they were doing. And that's why the country, which was not Rhodesia before then, I can't remember what the country was called, but it was also a tribe. So they put all these groups together, they're mixed tribes in order for them to divide each other. You see, that's another thing they did. They also taught them certain languages. This was all during the colonial period where many countries such as Germany, the Dutch were there, the Danish were there, some of them. Not the Danish, I'm sorry. The British, the French, the Spaniards, all of them were there. They were there to take. That's what they were there for. So the moral deal here is just to explain something here also. The whole dilemma with thinking of this is simply to exploit other countries and take from other countries, you see, which is morally wrong. It's morally wrong. So if you're going to do this, you're already crossed the line, you see. So going back to communitarianism is a brainchild of actually with Antonio Gramsci, who tried to sell this to the Soviet Union, and eventually they took hold of it. They realized simply what we call the slow path in order to take over. It's a Trojan horse. It's a Trojan horse in order to destroy the West, and they've done really well with that. And then what happened was with Antonio Gramsci, his ideas influenced Frankfurt School, which were almost all Jews there, who then realized simply as they could actually brainwash the people of the countries in the West. And that's what they did, you see. Now, collectivism is a modern, it's not a modern phenomenon. It's how the Jews work. They're not very individually thinkers. You see, they take orders from their kings, not their kings, but their priests, and tell them what to do. You can see it in the Bible. It's illustrated by the Bible. There's one or two hierarchies in the power structure of how they use it to tell the Jews whatever to do. And the Jews follow them or they don't follow them. And you'll notice this simply as you look at all the history of the Jews, it's warfare against all their neighbors. Look at the Bible, look at what they're talking about. It isn't about some God coming down there and helping them, whoever God their belief system is. We could get into that someday, because they have many gods. It's not just one God, you see. It's not the God of Jehovah or whatever we think it is. You see, we've been also brainwashed in that particular deal. So what's happening here, they adopted those thoughts from Antonio Gramsci, who then said, hey, this is a way of destroying the West in a different way, destroy their institutions, destroy their morality, all that, to threaten them, to destroy them, to actually do what we do, which is what I would call they're simply psychopaths. People at the very top are psychopaths in order to control all of us in a way to be just like they were, even the common Jews, who were actually slaves to the elite Jews at the very top. You see. It doesn't take, rocket science to look at. Look at Anders Sosa-Nielsen. Do some of the readings. There are people here. I've talked with a couple of people in the past, and simply everybody wants a 5-minute synopsis of everything. Good luck. I've spent years upon years upon years studying this stuff, folks. I've researched, looked in it. My background was simply as I've worked in business, family business. I have been in the background actually with theological seminary. I went to it, found out it was all false. I've also basically grew up in politics and political science, studied what I call international affairs. All those things have allowed me to figure these things out and see how this thing all it comes together. And so, unless we see these things, unless we actually grasp what's going on at the foundation part, we'll never figure out how to get out of it. We'll never figure out how to get out of it, you see, because most people are, I've talked to people and they say communitarianism. Well, that's community. No, that's not community. That's not a natural phenomenon. That's someone coming in and telling you what to do. And they actually use what I would call a facilitator to come in and speak to you. And they don't allow any, I've been to one of these things, folks. They don't allow any arguments. They are dictating to you because they have programmed these people as though we're the ones who understand the new world order. This is what we're going to do. You're going to be a part of this. If you're not, too bad. We don't want anything to do with you. You can go off and do your own thing. But you see, this also points out that this country itself was based upon the law of the land, not based upon the law of the sea. This is part of the Sesqui's view of 1666, which started in England, which was to do with the merchant. And the merchantism is being able to trade one and forth to each country back and forth, and exchanging, money or not money. Maybe exchanging spices, whatever you got. I've got something over here, And it also goes back to simply is that a lot of English soldiers or English people were being taken off the land as farmers and being conscript and fighting in the military for the British Empire. So the British were used also. They were used. They don't have any idea they were used, most of them don't, but the British were used to conquer other countries and to destroy them. If you would actually look at what Columbus did, and he came to the West, the island countries, he was there for one thing and nothing else. And his whole idea was to find gold, 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 because he was being used by the king in order to get as much gold as possible so that he could continue to finance wars around the world. You see, so the king was actually wanting more money, more gold, in order to finance this and to create a military apparatus. And so the normal soldiers were being conscript into the sea, where the seas, to go on ships these way and to attack other countries. So what they did was they killed all their elder people. They killed all the adults and took the children, or either left them there and then taught them the English way. And those children had no idea whatsoever they were being taught. They assumed it was true, and they were brainwashed. You see, so this is the people don't. You gotta look at history and what's happened. And why is the United States always raring and saying such great things about Columbus Day when Columbus never even set foot on America at all, folks? The Vikings were here before, much earlier, far earlier. There's actually documentation basically all the way into Oklahoma. There's ruins. There's RUNE. Their language is there on rocks. They were there. And we know the Egyptians were there too. We know that just simply is that in the Grand Canyon, they were there. They found their artifacts there. They were also in the state of Illinois, southern Illinois, that Harry Haas, I'm trying to think of his name, Harry, Herbert, I think his last name is. He is the one who's been spending about 20 years of his life, or not longer, discovered that the Egyptians settled north of Cairo, Illinois, probably about 50 miles north of that. And they stayed in what we call caves at that time. So they were there thousands of years before even we've been told, you see. Most people don't think the Egyptians ever got here. Most of them have been saying, well, they didn't have that technology. Really? How do you know that? Or is that what the Smithsonian Institute wants to tell you? Brainwash you again. Oh, they couldn't have done that. There's no way they could have done that. Well, there's no way the Vikings could have got here neither. Well, they got to the Greenland. They got to certain parts of Nova Scotia, all those areas there, New Brunswick, all those areas in Canada, they got there and settled. And they actually got in the northern parts of the United States, and then eventually roaming all the way up to Oklahoma. They could have got further. We just know that simply they got in that area of what I would call Oklahoma. And I would recommend a magazine if you really want to discover more about that. It's this particular magazine here. It's called Ancient America. This comes out, I think, 4 times a year or 6 times. I don't remember. But anyway, they go into what's happened in the past. They start doing diggings, and they have people doing this, and they're saying, we're being told lies. There have been many people here. The Japanese actually settled here also. The Japanese follow the Aleutian Islands and follow around. They just follow the islands, going northward and going back around to the Aleutian Islands and back to the western coast. The Russians did the same thing. You see, they follow the island, so to speak, and that's why you have, the Russians. They're actually in Northern California. Certain parts there still, or has been in the past, there've been Russian Orthodox Church settled there. They were settled there. And so this whole idea that simply is they couldn't have got here is a blatant lie. You see. Now, did they leave here, or did they simply die out? That's the question you have to ask yourself. You see. So there was technology back then. We're told that basically these people are stupid and they didn't know what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And well, how do you know that? And well, that's that you coming in with a presupposition. You're coming in with a thought saying, this is what we think it is, and we're going to make it true. So you come in with a presupposition, presupposing they didn't have technology, and you build your premise, you build your theories and you try to prove that to make it facts, and you start teaching that. And in fact, there is no facts, it simply is their theories. And so what happens simply is they teach this in school. They teach this at higher learning, higher education, you see. And most people cannot discern what is going on. They're completely lost. They actually are consumed or are thinking that they're the experts, they must know. No, maybe they're the experts simply is because they did have the knowledge, the truth, and they just basically twisted it in order to keep themselves in power. In fact, that's what they did. In fact, that's what most churches do too, folks. Most preachers in this, they've been brainwashed, or they grew up in a certain church system, that is denomination such and such. They go to that particular seminary and they teach them that such and such, and that's the only way to so and so to Jesus, supposedly. And then what happens simply is they teach that to the congregation. They make a presupposition that such and such is true, when in reality they're just following what they've been. It's a belief system. It's not based upon truth. It's based upon their beliefs, you see. And that's a scary thing, you see. And we know that the Bible itself, in some ways, in certain areas, does share things simply as to do even with the monetary things. We know we've been warned by a particular person, whoever Jesus is, although that is a Greek word. Jesus is a Greek, and it would not be J, it would be I. But the point simply is that there are certain people who actually settle in upper part of Galilee and Israel who were Greek descendants. And that makes me think simply is that Jesus came from that area, supposedly, if there is a certain person of that nature. And his three thoughts he shares in Matthew are very clear. Woe unto you lawyers. Look around. Who are the ones who create law? We don't need to create law, folks. It's common law. It's natural law. Do unto others, you like to be done yourself. That's all you got to know. Am I doing damage to my brother and sister? Yes or no? Am I stealing from him? Am I lying to him? Those are all basic stuff, you see. And then he spoke about the money changers. And who are the money changers? Because they were stealing from people for these sacrifice, their sacrificial either doves or lambs or whatever, and they were stealing from these people, you see. And he also spoke against the priestcraft, who basically were deceiving people. Oh, you can't do work on the Sabbath. It's the seventh day, such and such. It's made for God. That's his particular day. Well, who created all this stuff, folks? Man did. Most of the paganism simply is, I'm not saying I agree with paganism, but simply is they had many gods, supposedly. Because what they saw, simply everything above them was simply this God, because it was far higher than they were. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand they would say simply there's a God of lightning, there's a God of thunder. They didn't understand that. So they had what I call multi GODS, so to speak, to them, because they didn't have that thinking in their own mind, you see. But they never had what they call a monotheistic principles, that is, one male God. And those one male gods are found in only what we call in modern day, basically in the West, to do with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All of those are tied in with a monotheistic God, male God. One God rules everything. I'm not saying it comes across as simply as, I'm not saying I agree with the pagans. I don't agree with this other kind of people with the male gods neither, because it simply says this guy, God said this, he told you what to do. It's almost a dictatorship type of deal, you see. And so what people don't understand, these were taught, the church, the priests had the knowledge. They had the knowledge way back then of what was true and what was false, and they chose to deceive the people. They chose to deceive the people. And I believe that Judaism, or what I would call the Jews, look at their history of attacking countries, saying that their God was for them. We're going to go into Canaan, and this is ours. We're going to take this because of God. Wait a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. What God are you worshiping? What God are you worshiping? Who are you worshiping to do this to another human being? Sounds like God, he demands worship. Why would God demand worship? Because he's inferior. He's a God who was created by man. There would be, if there was a God, why would there be any sense of knowing, quote unquote, having a God to be worshiped? That's asinine. If he's God, he's God. If there's such a thing as that. So you see how they use this to brainwash people in that concept. So we have the idea simply, so you can see this in Scripture, what happens with Joseph in the Bible and what he does with the country of Egypt and destroys it. There's proof of that, folks. He destroys it. He says he collects all this grain, such and such, da da da, such and such, but it's actually to benefit his own people. To see, you see, his family comes there, such and such, and lo and behold, next thing you know, the Pharaoh has been duped. He's been fooled by Joseph, and goes on more and more. So please, later on, Moses and Moses especially, let's get you my people, such and such, da da da. Well, they steal all the plunder. This shows what type of people these people are. They steal the booty. They do this into other areas, supposedly in Palestine area. But was there even a Israel there? You see, their God goes and tells them attack these certain areas, countries, and basically, you know what he says? Kill them all. He says to kill them all. The women and the babies. In fact, they steal some of their stuff, and God gets upset about their saying, hey, you took some of their stuff, you're not supposed to do that. You took some of their women, such and such, and you did that. If that's true. But what that shows is simply what type of people that have been taught all this stuff for thousands and thousands of years. So not only did they destroy Egypt, we have another example simply as Esther. Esther is a prostitute. She's a harlot. She seduces the king of Persia. That's what she does. She seduces him, and guess what? The king does whatever she wants to do, and she's considered their savior of all of the Jews or the Israelites. But the guy who come in there trying to warn the king, he's destroyed. Not only is he killed, his whole family, his whole lineage is all killed. Trying to warn the people of what was coming. And what happened to Persia? It's gone. The civilization gone. And Persia was used before this to go in to destroy Babylon. They went in there and they said, we have the gates open for you and you will be able to come in for us. And so they were used again. The Persians were used. This is before Esther takes place. So what happens simply is they go into Babylon and destroy Babylon from within. All of these civilizations have been destroyed from a group of people from within. They've used other countries, used other people to do their fighting. And so, lo and behold, the Persian Empire falls. The Babylon, so you have Egypt, Babylon, you have Persia, you have Greece still, whole same thing. They tried to keep them out, such and such. And they kept coming in, such and such, stayed in there. And then what they did was simply destroy the Greek. And what happened was simply the next empire, the civilization was, quote unquote, Rome. Well, at one time, simply Rome was a very plentiful people. In fact, it was Rome, our country in some ways is actually historically where we get our way of government in a lot of ways is from Rome. But lo and behold, by the last part of the year, simply they were expanding in empirism, just like the United States has been doing for the last 100 years, going into other countries and messing with other people, not for the benefit of the American people, so to speak, but to take and plunder from them, to steal. I was explaining to this lady while I was talking to you that was living in South Africa, explained it simply as that why did they destroy Libya? Because Libya simply was self-sufficient, you see. They had Gaddafi. They said all kinds of bad things. I ran into a person at the years ago at a where you get oh shoot where you go to get food. That actually is you buy food from the farmers. And this guy came up to me and he says, "It's ours." I said, "Who the hell are you to tell us it's ours? It's our right to take it. We need oil. The problem is simply the guy doesn't understand it. We have plenty of oil here in the country. It's just a way of plundering other countries and stealing, keeping them from actually operating and selling oil. Get it? You see what I'm saying? You're not playing by the rules, Gaddafi. So you got to follow our deal. If you don't follow what we do, we'll come in and we'll destroy you." And that's what Britain and the American forces did. They destroyed it. He had actually had, you can say whatever you want to say about the guy. That's not the point. They discovered water in the desert. They were able to use that in order. They was becoming more and more self-sufficient. They didn't need anything from anybody else. And that was a threat to the rest of the powers, especially this quote unquote power from Britain and the United States, and also the three major deals, the Pope, the Holy City, and London, the city of London, and the city of Washington. And so what happened simply is we attacked that country and put it back to Stone Age, just because they wouldn't go along with us. You see, part of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, but also about the banks, the International Bank. All this is a part of that. Every bit of it. So I kind of got off a little bit what I wanted to say, but communitarianism itself, in reality, is a Jewish phenomenon. And it's also collectivism, which is what they're about. They always plunder from other people. They don't have any great art. They don't have any great music. Think about that. They don't have any of those things in the past, because in reality, they're not that type of people. They're a different type of people who come in and plunder. They're like leeches. They steal from other people. And then they go in, take it all, and the people waste away. That's what's happening today. And so my thoughts today simply is that to share with you that there is a remedy. There is a remedy here, and I shared this earlier. I reveal here what I call communitarianism, collectivism, which is slavery, and then go into my blog spot, which we call living in the private. Let me explain that type of thing, the thinking here. Living in the private is that most people are unaware that you're in the public with an all caps name. Anyone who has an all caps name is living in the public, and you're being used as a slave. You're being used as cattle. Your whole life is being used in that regard, you see. So what's happening simply is that your all caps is that you are living in the private. And this gentleman here, I wrote it here for you. It's the second deal here. I've shared it with you. You need to do the digging. I'm not gonna do everything for everybody anymore. I've done over 500 videos in the last 2 or 3 years of my life, sharing this information with people, and I'm done with it. I'm not going to be doing this anymore. I may do once in a while, but I'm moving on. It's not, if you want to, I've given essence of truth almost to everybody here. And it's up to you to pick up the ball and do the digging. But the living in the private is a guy who's in New Zealand and talks about this thing, and he shares with us. And you can download his whole thing about the birth certificate. The birth certificate is you in the public, the all caps name. But there is a trust behind that, you see. It is your trust, but you've got to discover how to get out of that, get that and get into private, you see. You see, that you can actually, you actually have been robbed of your quote unquote, what you were supposed to have before. You see, when the Americans were here beforehand, that is before 1900s basically, they were allowed to thrive because they were in the private. They were able to build, just create, whatever, to make this country a great country. And that's why this country thrived. That's why it worked. You see, until the late 1800s, the big change was during the war between the states, the South, and the North. There's two different perspectives. Neither one were right in a lot of ways. And what happened simply, it was also they wanted to divide this country. and actually there would be 2 different countries instead of 1. And then also simply is that Lincoln got in trouble for basically printing paper that the bankers did not want. You see, the bankers wanted to have control because they want to have control of the whole country, the money system. That's what they want. You see. So this whole deal with living in the private simply is that you have to go back and you use your birth certificate, and you basically go back. Your first step is simply is to go to the clerk of the county clerk of your county. In your county, you go to them. You want to authenticize what we call your birth certificate, and that's how you begin to make your road to get out of the system. And eventually, what you do simply is your work. If you go and research all this stuff, and you can go into Patrick Devine. He's on their site. You can just look it up on YouTube. He's done thousands of videos, not thousands, I should say, hundreds of videos, and revealing all the snippets of what he learned. And this was all back in 2013 or 12, maybe a little bit earlier than that, 2010. And so he taught all about this stuff. He doesn't go into it all. He talks about really a lot of specifics. But there are little nuggets there if you're willing to listen to it and involve yourself and learn something, you see. But what's happened simply is I found a particular guy who was actually on this particular deal, this site called, what I'm trying to think of is my mind just slipped. To do with, here it is, called Robots and Patriots. And the area you want to look into is the secure party creditor class, because you are the credit of this country. You are also the collateral. If you are the collateral, it's you when you're the all caps name. When you're not, you're the creditor, is when your name is no longer in all caps. That's a hint, okay? And that's on the Robots and Patriots. This guy does, he's a very young guy. His name is PJ. Polinsky is his last name. He learned all of his information from Gene Keating, Jeankeating. He's the one who understood a lot of this stuff and put it together, and he was one of his disciples. PJ picked up the ball and ran with it. In fact, you'll understand in one of his videos he shares. I'm looking forward to going to meet Mr. Keating. He's a hero of mine. He's set me free, and in reality he has, because the guy is no longer in the system. The guy is a multi-millionaire, because simply is they put your trust into Social Security, but it's not what people think it is. The Social Security is what the people go to after 65 years old. So people don't understand that. That's peanuts. So that's nothing. But in reality, you have to come in a proper way in order to get what is owed to you. You see, they stole from you. You see, this was all part of Roosevelt, which Roosevelt, as far as I know, was a crypto Jew. Morgan was a crypto Jew. Rockefeller was a crypto Jew. The Rothschilds were crypto Jews. There's only a very few of these people, but they use other people, minions, what I would call them, to do their dirty work. And they're almost all of them you see is their type of, what's his name? Carnegie was also a crypto Jew. What I mean by crypto Jew is simply this. They become a Protestant or a Catholic and act like they are, quote unquote, somebody in there. That is, they put themselves as though they're being a part of the whole system, being in America or Britain or whatever. And then what happens simply is people think, oh, they're just one of us, and they don't understand how they're being deceived. This is a very elaborate system. It's taken hundreds of years for them. It's basically started with Rothschild and others who were Jews. And they realized simply they could use money in order to lead people where they wanted to. And eventually they could actually use them to win wars. They could actually fund both sides and not lose, you see. And so back when I was talking about PJ Polinsky, the guy, he's talking about the secure party deal, you see. And it's amazing what this guy's learned. This guy's probably in his early 30s. And so few people don't realize this, what this guy has done. to help people. And this is a way out. So his name is Peter Joseph Polinsky. He's called by his students PJ. And you begin to work. You listen to what he's doing, and you go down to your county clerk. One thing you begin to move in that direction, and he gives you the step-by-step approach. He gives it all to you. It's all there. It's all there if you want it. What does it say? Only those who study to show thyself approved. That's how you learn this. It's not a 5-minute deal. It's not something that way. You have to study it. It's not going to be given to you. You're going to have to dig. And that's what it's about. And so most people are not willing to do that. And so what happens simply is they'll never find the truth. They won't. They've never put in the time to study. They don't see that it means much, you see. And so they like this cookie cutter stuff. They've been brainwashed in a lot of ways to believe that simply is, oh, give me a 10-minute spill and I'll know all this stuff. Bullshit. You'll never learn it that way. And that's part of the programming. Most people don't have the stable all to basically continue into dig and dig and dig, trying to find the truth. They quit. You see. So I don't. Pretty much, this is what I want to share with you today. Like I said earlier, the communitarianism is it's just another clever word to deceive people. It's just collectivism. That's what it is. You look at it, what's going on in California and other out west states, especially, they're putting people in like sardine cans. That's what they're doing. And oh, by the way, they're doing this by what we call fires. They have a way of actually creating fires, and also to get you off the property. And unless you understand that also, that you basically what they've done, they've stolen what was yours. Your family, a long time ago, back in the 1800s, passed down their land to their siblings. And what they've done is come up with what I call legalese with these lawyers, which are nothing but they're used and think they're practicing law. They're not practicing law. They're practicing a way of stealing from other people, and the people don't know any better, you see. So they've stolen all that was yours and get you off the land. Or they've done, look at what happened in California with the banking deal with the mortgage back in 2008 and 9. The banks, what the banks did, clearly what they did, they sold those mortgages because, see, the President Clinton, back in the 1990s, decided to put investment bankers and commercial bankers together. And you'll see why there's been what we call 3 major deals. You've had the dot-com deal, you've had the mortgage deal in 2008, 9, 10, and what you're having is the third one this year, at the time, which is the collapse of banks. It's going to be what I call simply all these little banks, little small ones, medium banks, whatever. They're going to be taken over, or they're just going to be basically put to the side. They're going to be eliminated. And I've talked to people. People they deny it. They continue to live in denial. I talked to people who had plenty of money, and they've lost it. It's gone already. It's already gone. If you have money in the bank and you haven't gotten your money out, you're not going to get what you think you're going to get, folks, unless you're in a smaller bank. People are already doing this. They're taking the money. The problem is simply is the money itself, the paper money, will only last for a certain amount of time, and they'll introduce their digital money. They fool people with this crypto crap. Because it's not real money. If it's not in your hands, folks, you don't own it. It's that simple. People just don't seem to understand. Well, I have a password. Big deal. The people in Russia, this whole thing took place in the night 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, back in March, actually, a year ago. They closed those crypto deals with the Russian people. They took their money, their crypto. They took it all. You don't have it in your hands. It's that simple. And those that don't have it in their hands are used. You see, they're fooled. So again, like I said, the idea of, I'm trying to think of the word I want to say, and I can't seem to figure it out. The whole idea simply is that they've taken your everything that was yours. See, this is why this country thrived. This is why this country thrived, because basically it was passed down generation to generation until basically when late 1890s, 1900s, you saw major changes take place in this country. Suddenly, the powerful people now corrupted the politicians, and the politicians said, "That sounds like a good idea. You just give me $100,000 and I'll put up the bill and we'll pass this thing and we'll make it law." And that's what they did. They bought them. And so then what happens? People were now taxed on their wages, you see. And then lo and behold, the idea that the senators, I mean, your senators were chosen. Most people don't even know this, that 2 senators from each state of the country they were chosen by their own state, not by the people, but by their own house and senators in their own state houses. And so that robbed state power. That destroyed state power. And it gave to the what we call the mob, the people, you see. And then they also brought in women could vote now. So that meant, that means more people can vote, see, and such. So it could be able to be moved to square, whatever it is. It's not to put down women. It was a way of actually adding someone else in order to get this thing to roll on with it. The other thing simply is that they created this banking system, this Federal Reserve. It was done all in basically dark at night. Anybody that does it at night should tell you they did this at night, folks. They went to an island here off the coast of Georgia, Jekyll Island. I've done a book on Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins. He points this out. Far better book than G. Edward Griffin. Eustace Mullins did all the hard work, folks. And he was influenced by Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound was thrown in because he disagreed with the American people, the government, and what they were doing in Europe. You see. You remember Germany never attacked America, don't you? You do know that, don't you? Can you get that through your head? You see, the only country actually attacked us was Japan, and that's because simply as we moved our quote-unquote naval base from San Diego to Hawaii to make it easier for them to attack us. Germany never attacked the United States. All the people say Lusitania, really, was only about 150, 200 people killed. And Woodrow Wilson started a war about that. They never set foot on this ground. They never actually attacked this country. And yet our soldiers went to fight over in Germany. Same thing in World War I. Same thing with what took place in 9/11. Hello, anybody out there? They come here and attack us? You see ships come here? Well, government says, these people that did a quote-unquote cave did this. Bullshit. Your own government was complicit with it, folks. That's how bad it is. And also simply is what took place down there is, you look at the deal, it's just a completely, the thing goes down like a pancake. So it's basically, guess what? The trade centers came down because it was an inside job. They put bombs within the whole system to bring it down. He's construction the whole thing. In fact, the guy says he's pulled it. And yet we go to Iraq and Afghanistan and destroy those countries. And who would he do that for? Well, see, I don't know about Afghanistan, but I do know what Iraq was all about. It was done in order to basically make the greater Israel, you see, and destroy it, put it back to kingdom, back to the Stone Age. And they made money, these countries, the companies did. Halliburton, all these companies made money. It's amazing if people would just unravel the truth and put it together. That's what it is, folks. And your country does this. Why do we have 300 bases across the world, folks? Oh, well, that's because they're protecting the sea lanes. Really? No. We're there in case if anything happens in any particular area, we can rapidly deployment and go and get involved in some country and basically, threaten them and say, you better back down or else. Most of this stuff goes on. Most people are not even aware of what's going on. It's a little blip on the news. Oh, I don't even know where that country is. You ask people simply is, where's Pakistan? I don't know. Oh, where's that at? Where's Angola? What about, you also have to understand, like I just said earlier, why did the Northern Hemisphere always fights each other? Why are there always these wars all in the Northern Hemisphere, unlike the wars, if there are wars, which are smaller wars in the southern part of the this particular world itself, the earth? Why are there no major wars that take place there? There are wars that could take place there. I'm not saying that, but they're not what I call world wars. You'll notice that almost all those countries in the North Hemisphere shoot and kill one another. Why is that? Why is that happening? Why is that happening with basically white people? Why is that happening? Why are white people so gullible and actually go and fight wars? I remember talking to a guy in 2001, I guess it was. Oh, I'm going to go fight over there and kill the Iraqis. Really? Are you sure you want to do that, son? Well, that's what my government tells me. Yeah, that's what your government tells you. And you kill people, basically, you kill harmless, innocent people. And you go back to the commandment, do unto others as you like to be done. Those people come over here and attack us? No. Do you see them? No. That's what your government tells you. That tells your government is so bought and paid for by a foreign entity. The bar is also a foreign deal. It's a Trojan horse, folks. They discovered simply, it's like I said, Antonio Gramsci, they could do all these things and destroy the country from within. They've known that. It's just a different way of dealing with it. You need to study who these people were in Frankfurt School. You need to study the people who Dr. John Coleman talks about, these people in the Tavistock Institute. They know how you react, see. You see, they studied rats, and they found out simply is that rats, and that's part of the moral problems here also, the degeneracy, because what happens simply is morally, people are not willing to do what's right anymore. They want to do what's right in their own eyes. Not willing to do what's right. So they'll go and use people. So you become like a psychopath. You don't really care about this particular woman. You just want to, quote unquote, get in bed with her, you see. You don't have the decency to do what's right because you're going to be just like them because that's what they want you to be like. Because you'll be led like a dog, you see. You'll be fooled. You'll be led down wherever they want to lead you. Because you don't have any principles in your life. You don't stand for what's right. You're gullible. When you're gullible, you don't stand for what's right, you're easily to pull around by a rope. Easily. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to be a part of this. Nope, that's not right. Well, it might benefit me. Nope, it doesn't benefit me here. Because I know in the long run, if I go down that road, I'll be more and more of that chain, that rope will be tighter on my neck. So anyway, I appreciate you being here. And again, there's a particular white website also that I've shared here. Living in the private is important to look into. Also, gentlemen, again, like I said, PJ also is here. And simply it's the whole idea of communitarianism, collectivism. It's a Jewish thing. It's a Jewish thing, folks. It is slavery. And that's what took place in the Soviet Union. I've done videos on the Soviet Union. I've studied Soviet Union history. I've studied Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I know who these people are, what they're about. You see. So I wish you a good day. And again, thank you. You take care.